Oh, it looks like less than 4 minutes. It says live. Why does it say live?
Because we're just waiting for, well, it's live. It's live now. I just put it on live. So right now, this is just the stream. At the end, you can just click end. Click
Where's the end?
Here, you see it?
Oh, okay.
And broadcast, and then you can just close it.
Okay.
Let me just share it to Facebook real quick, so people can go. This is your link. This is you. This is your. So you're live now, okay? You can wait. You can wait 2 minutes, or you can just go live now. Right?
Right side or left side?
Right is good. Was there any announcements for the day?
You can go ahead and start now. I'll listen from the outside.
Before we start, I have a public service announcement. Please wear your masks when you go out in public. So I'm removing mine now because other people are leaving the room to attend to something else. Welcome, everybody. I was asked by Venerable Panyamati to give the talk today. So I'm going to talk on a subject related to Tuesday's talk on the kalamas. The talk was on the kalamas, the people in the town where they had this inquiry to the Buddha, and I'll speak to you about that in a minute. So we can start now. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. So I'm going to assume that people watching this. It's very strange to be just talking to myself. I just see my image on the screen. But as I was saying, I wanted to speak about a sutta. I'm going to talk about a sutta. Actually, there's a couple of suttas I wanted to mention, but related to the theme that Venerable Panyawati and Sister Clear Grace started last Tuesday. They were speaking about the Kalama Sutta, and their theme for this year, I don't know if I've got it exactly correct, but it's actually putting into action, to put into our lives these teachings, not just studying and getting an intellectual understanding of them. So picking suttas or teachings that relate to our lives directly, our experience in the world. Actually, according to the Buddha's teaching, there's an internal world and external world. So we work with our internal world in order to be effective and helpful in the external world, not to cause harm. So I wanted to just really briefly summarize the Kalama Sutta so we can see what the relationship to the sutta I'm about to talk about is. And the Kalama Sutta starts out with the Kalamas. The people called the Kalamas are very confused because there's all these different ascetics and wanderers coming through, these gurus coming through, and they're perplexed because there's all these different ideas and arguments about their doctrines and their views and what's right and what's wrong. So the Blessed One, the Buddha, comes to their town, and they go to the Blessed One and they say, we're very perplexed, with all these different teachings, all these different ideas of what's right and wrong. So the Buddha says, of course you're perplexed, but the important thing that the Buddha brings out in the sutta is that one should know for oneself, not just from what other people say, by tradition, even by scripture or pondering some view, but really what he's saying, you should know for yourself. He's really saying, check it out, test it out. What's harmful? What's helpful? So what do you think, Kalamas? He keeps asking the Kalamas. And he talks about if a person acts with greed, hate, and delusion, is that for their harm or for their benefit? And they say, well, it's for their harm. and then if they're out of greed, hate, and delusion, they lie, they steal, they kill living beings, they commit sexual misconduct. Is that for their harm or benefit? And they're saying, oh, well, it's for their harm. And is this something that the wise, he also mentions this is important. Would the wise approve of this? Would the wise want to censor this and censure this? And they say, well, it wouldn't be approved by the wise. So what he's trying to encourage is for each one of us to be wise, to be one of the wise, and also respect for people. Who do we consider wise as well? That we kind of look to them. But the test actually is by our experience, our direct experience, and also what we observe in the world. I mean, obviously, if somebody is killing, they might get caught and go to jail if they're killing other human beings. There's like consequences of behavior. If anyone's killed, like with their own hand, a living being, they know, you know how frightened the living being is. Even an ant will be running away if you're trying to kill it. So you guess that this animal or insect or whatever is afraid. So you see the harm, you understand the harm or actions, and then of course with sexual misconduct, families break up over these kind of things. So this is what the Buddha mentions, these four things, and also this view that, or that's actually in the Kalamas, they encourage other people to do the same thing. They encourage other people to, it's the first four of the five precepts, or the mindfulness trainings, I guess is what it might be called here, or in the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition, the five mindfulness trainings to avoid these harmful actions. The fifth one is avoiding or abstaining from intoxicants, because we are likely to break any of the other precepts if we're intoxicated. And people do. I mean, this is even like drunk driving. People kill other people, not intending, but it happens. So there's a lot of harm that comes from intoxicants. So this is the inquiry that the Buddha had encouraged to the Kalamas. And so this is a famous and well-loved sutta. It's in the numerical discourses if you want to look at it. And I think it's also was posted online. There's probably a way to access it through Heartwood too, because it was in the discussion on Tuesday. The sutta I want to discuss today is the conch blower. And I wanted to have my clock. I have my clock, excuse me. So I can keep track of the time. Okay. There, sorry about that. Just pretend we're at home and, we're just having kind of a casual conversation here. So anyway, so the sutta that came to mind when I was hearing Venerable Panyawati and Sister Clear Grace speaking last Tuesday about the Kalama Sutta was the conch blower. And this is a wonderful sutta. It's very similar in a lot of ways, but it's different. Oh, I forgot to mention, with the Kalamas, not only did they do this inquiry, and they decided that these things were harmful, and that abstaining from them was helpful. It was led to happiness in their lives. The Buddha at the end also gave them a teaching on the four immeasurables, or the four divine abodes of loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity. And he said to pervade the all-encompassing world, pervade the four quarters with a mind imbued with loving kindness and compassion and altruistic joy and equanimity. So this sutta has the same similar framework, where the Buddha is talking about these the four of the five precepts, the first four of abstaining from harming living beings or killing, abstaining from stealing, abstaining from sexual misconduct, and abstaining from harmful speech or lying. So in the conch blower, it's similar in that he's talking to a headman of a village, and I imagine there's probably other people present, not just the headman that's asking the question. So a lot of times the leader of the village, he'd be like the mayor or something like that, would be the one that would be the spokesman for the people, and everybody in the village might be there, or all the adults might be there, or all the men might be there, because sometimes the women are not included in these kind of discussions, and sometimes they are. But anyway, depending on the situation. But I imagine at least there were some other people there. And then this headman was a follower of the Niganthas, which is, I guess it's similar to the present day Jains, but they had this extreme asceticism, or they were doing self-torment to purify the ones that were the ascetics in this group, not the followers. The village people wouldn't be doing these things. But they would be, in order to burn off their negative karma, they believed that if they did things like stand on their one foot for hours, like one leg, stand out in the cold, naked on one leg for hours, that they would burn off negative karma from their current life and previous lives. So they thought that if they induced self-inflicted pain and suffering, then they would burn off the old karma. But they probably spoke differently to the lay people, their followers, because the Buddha asked this. This is Asi Bandha Kaputta is the name of the headman, and he came to the Buddha, and it just kind of cuts to the chase here, where the Buddha asked, "What is the Nigantha Nataputta?" That's the leader of the Niganthas. And Putan means son, so it's not a Spanish cuss word. It actually is spelled with two T's, and it means son. So the son of Nata, or the son of Asi Bandhaka. So these are these are names, kind of like John's son or something like that. Anyway, so the Buddha asks him, what does he teach his disciples? What is his discipline? And then the headman says, "Venerable Sir, Nigantha Nataputta teaches the Dhamma to his disciples thus: anyone at all who destroys life is bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Anyone at all who takes what is not given is bound for a state of misery, bound for hell." And the other three too. I mean, anyone who engages in sexual misconduct is bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Anyone who speaks falsehood, anyone at all. So, and then this, whatever one does frequently, then this is where their karma is going to lead them. So the Buddha kind of questions the headman and says, "Well, is this, like during the day, if you kill, do you spend the whole day killing?" And he says, "No." And he says, "Well, how about lying or stealing?" "No, of course there's a lot of other activities we do throughout the day. If someone is engaging in those kind of activities, it's not very often. And so he says, well, then in that case, no one would be bound for hell. And then this kind of thinking might lead to somebody to think that, well, I can get away with it, you know. So it's not quite a wholesome attitude to take. Anyway, so the Buddha, has a counter question to what Asibandhaka Putta says. That's a long name, hard to remember. So he just addresses them as headman in the sutta here. And then he goes on, here, headman, some teacher teaches such a doctrine and view this: anyone at all who destroys life, who takes what is not given, engages in sexual misconduct, and speaks falsehood is bound for a state of misery. And then it occurs to him, my teacher holds such a view, and I've done these things. I've committed such acts. And then he acquires such a view. He says, now I've destroyed life. I too am bound for a state of misery, for hell. And he acquires such a view. He does not abandon that assertion and that state of mind. And he does not relinquish that view. Then according to his deserts, he will be, as it were, dropped off in hell. So in this sutta, the Buddha isn't saying, well, whether or not you believe that the consequences of your actions. I guess maybe because this headman was believing in some consequences of actions in an afterlife. So he was kind of trying to make a point. And part of the point, too, that stands out for me is that he doesn't abandon that state of mind. And then what happens actually is we have a state of mind of hell in our own minds because we're tormenting ourselves with fear and anxiety and over the consequences in this life and the consequences in the next life of our unwholesome actions, our harmful actions. So the Buddha goes through all four of these, plus holding on to that view that they're bound for hell because they've committed, like even lying. He's saying, even if they lie, they're bound for hell, or killing living beings or sexual misconduct. So there's no real, with this is pointed out somewhere else, with this kind of attitude is that my destiny is fixed because I committed some act in the past. So how are we motivated to stop the action? If we're lying and doing these things, we might think stealing, I'm just going to be a better thief, I'm just I'm bound for hell anyway. So there's no motivation for me to stop stealing, is there? Just to maybe be a better thief. Or I just torment myself for the rest of my life because I'm bound for hell. Even if I stop, even if I desist because I'm out of fear of the consequences in this life. So then the Buddha gives an alternative to this way of thinking. And he says, here, headman, a Tathagata arises in the world. And then it's a description of the qualities of the Tathagata. But anyway, somebody becomes confident in the Buddha, or the Buddha's teaching. And so this person is confident in the Buddha's teaching, and he thinks, in many ways, the Blessed One criticizes and censures the destruction of life. He says, abstain from the destruction of life. He criticizes and censures the destruction of the taking of what is not given. And he says, abstain from taking what is not given. He criticizes and censures sexual misconduct. And he says to abstain from doing that. He criticizes and censures false speech. And he says, abstain from false speech. So then the disciple has full confidence in the teacher, and he reflects thus. In many ways, the Blessed One criticizes, and so on. Now, I have done this. I have destroyed life to such and such an extent. That wasn't proper. That wasn't good. But though I feel regret over this, that evil deed of mine cannot be undone. So evil is kind of a strong word. There's probably, we could find a better translation. I looked, Bhante Sujato says bad, the bad deed. We could say harmful deed. Anyway, unwholesome deed. Evil has a very strong connotation, so you don't have to take it that way. But harmful, definitely harmful. So it can't be undone. So it's true. I mean, if we've done something, we can't undo it. If we told a lie, we could go to the person and make amends and say, I'm sorry, I told you an untruth, and, and try to, maybe the person will get angry at us or something. We can make amends if we stole something. Maybe we repay the person that we, did something, to help them out, to overcome what we did. Certainly if we killed, we can't undo that. There's no way you can undo that. But then it goes further. It's not just feeling remorse here. Having reflected thus, he abandons the destruction of life. He abstains from destruction of life in the future. Thus there comes an abandoning of that, I'm going to say, unwholesome, harmful deed. Thus there comes about a transcending of that evil deed or unwholesome deed. So transcending, this is really important. First you reflect, and it's good to have some amount of remorse. And I'm going to just tell a little story just to help illustrate this. Where about 30 years ago, when I was married and renting a little cottage with my husband, and there was a mouse in our electric stove, and we were concerned about the mouse chewing on the wires or making a nest and causing an electrical fire or something. So we decided that we would set a trap for it. So my husband got one of those little cheap snap or spring-loaded traps that kills mice. So somebody, it might have been me, put it in the stove. I don't know which one bought it and which one put it in the stove, but anyway, I was part of the decision, let's do it. And so the next time I checked, there was the little dead mouse in the trap. And so I held that trap with the little mouse in it in my hand, and I felt so bad. This, now I even feel sad thinking about it. The poor little mouse, distorted body in the trap. It had to have suffered. And so I haven't done that since. I haven't set a trap that will kill an animal since. I try not to kill even insects. I might have killed insects since then, I'm not sure. But at this point, I'm not intentionally killing any living being. I'm trying to help other living beings, like if they need to get out, to kindly put them out. But and there's other ways of live trapping animals. So that remorse, that feeling of sadness, that feeling of regret, I made this, intention, this to abandon that behavior, and I did. I haven't done it since, and I don't lie awake at night thinking about the poor mouse every night or something like that. I don't want to be like, I was, it's just that, we have to see the harm we're causing, and it's going to hurt, but then we let go. We need to let go. And it talks about transcending, abandoning and transcending. Now, this is very important. So we're reflecting on what we did, or making a determination to abandon that behavior. And he goes through all the other behaviors that were mentioned: the sexual misconduct, stealing, lying. I want to mention alcohol again, and drugs, because they cause a lot of suffering in people's lives if we abuse them, certainly. And there's totally abstaining. Some people might argue if they don't think they have a problem with it, but very often it's problematic. So it's one of the precepts. So how do we transcend? This is like abandoning. So the Buddhist speaks further about this. Oh, before I read this, I wanted to tell a little story that I heard on retreat one time. It's a cute story, and it actually kind of fits in with what I'm talking about. There were these two boys, and they were getting in all kinds of mischief. They were still pretty young, like about, I don't know, the teacher who told the story didn't mention an age, but I imagine maybe they're around 6 and 8 years old. And, they're doing things like, maybe stealing pies that were cooling on the windowsill or something like that, or the neighbor stealing apples from the neighbor's trees, or, just kind of mischief, but it was still something that really concerned the father, that the boys were engaging in this kind of behavior. And he probably tried to talk to him. He was a religious man, and he went to the local temple regularly, and he didn't want to punish the boys harshly. So he went to the temple, and he talked to the Swami there. And he told the Swami about what was going on with the boys, and so they talked it over, and they decided the Swami would talk to the boys, and it would be better if they came one at a time. So they decided, let's bring the younger one first. So the younger one was brought to the temple by the father, and he was sitting in the chair in the temple, and the Swami was kind of pacing back and forth a little bit because he wasn't quite sure what to say to the boy. And then he went, "Oh, I know what to say. Okay." So he says to the boy, "Where is God?" And the boy says, "I don't know. This is a holy place. He must be somewhere here in the temple." And the Swami says, "You're not really understanding. Where is God?" And he says, "I don't know. If he's not here, where can he be?" And so the Swami looks deeply in the boy's eye, and he points at the boy's heart. And the boy gets really frightened. He jumps and he runs out of the temple, and he runs to the home, and he goes to his brother and he says, "God is missing, and they think I stole him." So this is, there's a little bit of meaning to the story. I was reflecting on the story because all the monk that told the story said was, "Oh, it's a misperception." And so this is a misperception. And so Why did he have a misperception? Well, of course, if you're thieving, then if something's missing, people are going to blame you, right? And then, but the thing is, the Swami was trying to point out the good in the boy, the divine in the boy. So this is what some people believe, that each one of us has God, like we all have God in our heart, or, God is within us or something like that. So, of course, the boy this is it's a fictitious joke. So if we are engaging in harmful behavior, it's really difficult for us to see the good in ourselves. It's really difficult for us to see our divine nature. So I have another story, and it's not a joke, I promise. It's called, I think it's called The Gold Cleaner. I tried to find it online, and Bhante Sujato calls it the panner, like you're panning gold. But I haven't looked at the originals that I saw, the original sutta that I looked at. But it describes putting the raw gold ore in a big trough with water and washing the gold. And the gold is full of dirt and gravel and sand. So the gold cleaner repeatedly washes the gold in order to purify the gold, prepare it for further purification. I don't remember the word for it right now, but you know what I mean, just the smelting of the gold to purify the gold, to make it ready for use. So the first step is to get all the major impurities out. So the gold panner or the gold cleaner will be pouring out the old water and throwing out the gravel, sifting out the gravel and sifting out the fine sand. The point I want to make here is that we don't want to throw out the gold. We don't want to throw out the gold with the bathwater. We need to see the preciousness that we each have. We need to, but the impurities are in the way. So this is this process we're initiating by abandoning unwholesome behaviors. The behaviors themselves are the coarser, the coarse gravel in the simile. So when carefully keeping what's good and seeing what's good in ourselves, seeing that purity, seeing that, if you want to say, divine nature. It's not particularly Buddhist, but a lot of people can relate to that, the purity of heart. So this is the process we're doing, the important self-inquiry, self-reflecting, and also a change in our behavior, body, speech, and mind. So we don't want to cause harm to ourselves either by tormenting ourselves. It's not about tormenting ourselves. It's about transformation, this abandoning, this self-reflection, and abandoning the unwholesome qualities. So don't forget to see the good in yourself. So here is the ending of the sutta, which talks about the transformation a little bit more. Having abandoned the destruction of life, he abstains from the destruction of life. Having abandoned taking what is not given, he abandons taking what is not given. Having abandoned sexual misconduct, he or she, they, whoever, oneself, we could say, we abstains from sexual misconduct. Having abandoned false speech. He abandons false speech. Having abandoned divisive speech, he abstains from divisive speech. That's a hard word for me. Divisive speech. Having abandoned harsh speech, he abandons harsh speech. Having abandoned idle chatter, he abandons idle chatter. Having abandoned covetousness, he is uncovetous and covetous. Having abandoned ill will and hatred, he has a mind without ill will. Having abandoned wrong view, he is one of right view. This is going beyond this 4 things that were previously mentioned. He's getting more refined with speech. The Buddha is saying this is what this development of this person is purifying his behavior. So this is behavior of body, speech, and mind. So we're avoiding all kinds of harmful speech and also harmful states of mind, abandoning ill will, and covetousness is kind of an old-fashioned word, but desiring something that's actually not ours, or just having a mind obsessed with desire or greed. So then headman, he's just still speaking to the headman, that noble disciple who is thus devoid of covetousness, devoid of ill will, unconfused, clearly comprehending, ever mindful, dwells pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with loving kindness. So this is a preparation. If you're interested in metta, developing the meditation of loving kindness, it's almost impossible if your mind is confused and full of ill will and full of desire to really practice loving kindness, the practice of loving kindness. Loving kindness can, if you develop it regularly, it can replace the unwholesome states of mind. If I start feeling angry or something and I start bringing up thoughts of loving kindness, this replaces it. But we have to do the preliminary work. We all alongside with to kind of bringing up these thoughts, we have to do the preliminary work. And so this is what the Buddha is saying. And then you notice here it says devoid of covetousness, devoid of ill will, unconfused, clearly comprehending, ever mindful. So the noble disciple who's doing this practice dwells pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. This is the quarters, 4 quarters. So this is the 4 directions. Somewhere I read that it starts with the east. So I don't know. And also I heard an instruction is pervading in front of you first, and then to one side, and then to another side, and then behind, above, below, around, and everywhere. He dwells pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with compassion, with a mind imbued with altruistic joy, with a mind imbued with equanimity. So we have to develop these qualities in ourselves, otherwise we can't pervade ourselves and pervade others. So we have to really understand what these are and cultivate them in ourselves. But working with our behavior really is a good start. So he dwells pervading the entire world with a mind imbued with equanimity, vast, exalted, measureless, without hostility, without ill will. And this is where the simile comes in, the name of the sutta. Just as a strong conch blower can easily send his signal in the four quarters, so too, when liberation of mind by equanimity is developed and cultivated in this way, a limited karma that was done does not remain there, does not persist. So this is an interesting aspect of the sutta, talking about the limited karma and the four immeasurables or four divine abodes of loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity. When they're developed to a state of meditation close to the jhanas, or some people say that you actually enter into an absorption with them, then unable to pervade in all directions loving kindness or compassion or altruistic joy, then there's no place anywhere for any unwholesome mental states, certainly. You've overcome them completely. And then this may indicate that your future, the fruits of your karma are mitigated. It sounds, some people believe that's what this sutta is saying. Certainly, if you change your behavior, you stop, you cease and desist, stop harming living beings, you stop, whatever your past. There's consequences in this life, of course. If you steal something, especially something very valuable, you're likely you might go to jail. Certainly, if you've committed some kind of sexual misconduct, you're harming yourself and others most likely, or you live in fear of getting caught. You and the person you're involved with are both kind of like feeling, if you're doing it on the sly. So there's consequences in this life. So if you've stopped and you made amends, certainly your life is going to be, it's like what the Buddha was saying to the Kalamas, the consequences in this life are at least lessened. You've stopped, you try to make amends, and then you will live a happier life because you won't have the fear of, and you won't have the kind of regret that's really haunting you because you're continuing the behavior and you haven't resolved it. So this is about self-inquiry as well as self-transformation and changing our behavior. If we think about things like the opposites of these unwholesome behaviors, this is also what one can cultivate. You can have metta in action rather than just sitting on your cushion and thinking thoughts of loving kindness. Do acts of loving kindness. So also a guideline is the opposites of the harmful behaviors. So instead of stealing, you develop generosity. You do generous acts. And it's not just giving a lot of money to some charity or something like that, or sharing your cookies with your friends or something like that. But it's, you can do things for others, helping people who are in need with something like, like as people get older, it's difficult for them to care for themselves, and you might help them out somehow. If you're aware, oh, it's very difficult for this person to carry this, and so you go and you help. So this is an act of generosity. And like I was saying, with harming living beings, if we do things to help other living beings, like to carefully remove the animal from your house, but also maybe thinking about habitat for other living beings. I'm not here to give examples, but you can use your imagination, what will be helpful to support life, to help others. When we refrain from harmful actions, we're giving the gift of harmlessness. So non-harming is a gift, and a feeling of safety. People know that they can trust us. So this is another important gift to give to others. So if you are interested, there's a lot of information online about the cultivation of the 4 Brahma Viharas. You can look up loving kindness or developing loving kindness, and it'll probably connect you with all the others. In the suttas, the Buddha never just mentions metta or loving kindness. Another word for loving kindness is goodwill. I saw amity too, and another sutta would say, another translation, it called it amity, as opposed to enmity. So goodwill as opposed to ill will. And His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, says, emphasize kindness. When you talk about loving kindness, he says, my religion is kindness. So, but you can find ways to develop. I'm sure there's guided meditations galore. And I know there's a lot of teachings on it. There's a sutta also called the Buddha's Words on Loving Kindness. You can find that particular teaching also online. There's not so much about the other 3. They're usually just all 4 are mentioned as the 4 Brahma Viharas in the suttas. But compassion is not a kind of self-torment either. It's not to increase suffering in the world. So if we know someone else is suffering, it's not that we turn being indifferent is one thing. That's not compassion, of course. But it isn't pity or feeling some kind of angst in ourselves. It's more that we understand their suffering, and if there's something we can do to alleviate the suffering, then we should do it. But if we can't, we shouldn't torment ourselves, like with pity or something, or angst. This isn't what compassion is about, but the understanding of the suffering in the world, and the wish to end it, So we start with ourselves, actually. This is how the 4 Brahma Viharas work, the 4 immeasurables work, or the divine abodes, as we start with ourselves. And these suttas actually are pointing to that. We start with ourselves. Out of kindness to ourselves, we refrain from unwholesome behaviors. Out of kindness to ourselves, we develop wholesome qualities. So this is the very basic teaching of the Buddha, abandoning the unwholesome and developing the wholesome. So I didn't know I wouldn't have a live audience here. So, and I don't see any way to take questions. That wasn't set up for me. So I think what I'll do, I think there's about, my clock, I think is fast and I don't see the clock on. Oh, here it is. Okay, so there's 8 minutes left. So for the last 8 minutes, what I'd like to do is do a little bit of guidance for loving kindness. So if you get into yourselves in a position, an upright position, if you can, if you're able to, and just bringing awareness to your body, however it's positioned. If you're sitting up, getting a sense of the body as a whole, the weight of the body, whatever it's contacting, if you're sitting in a chair or sitting on a cushion, or however your position, wherever there's a sense of the force of gravity, just feeling the body. And then starting from the top of the head, if you can sense, can you feel the top of your head? And then this awareness that you have of the top of your head. This is give this awareness as a sense of kind and caring awareness. And bring that awareness down towards the forehead. If you sense any tension in the forehead, just give it your kind attention, inviting the forehead to relax, inviting the muscles around the eyes to relax if there's any tension anywhere in the face. Just like a soothing balm, this attention is just kind of gliding over the face, down to the neck, the shoulders. No need to carry the weight of the world on the shoulders. Down the arms to the fingertips. Let the hands be at ease. No need to do anything. And then up again to the chest. You might feel the rhythm of the breath, the chest arising and lowering, expanding and contracting. Just how it is. Excuse me. Down to the abdomen, which is also expanding and contracting. Over the tops of the thighs, down to the soles of the feet. Then up again to the buttocks, the back. Just feeling the whole body. This body that's worked so hard all our lives, caring for this and that. Just gratitude for this human life. And then bring up the wish. May I be happy. May I be at ease. So here we start with ourselves, pervading ourselves, whatever that is. This being here, maybe the self has to disappear. It's so pervaded with loving kindness, there's no room for a self. And once we've really pervaded this being with the loving kindness, then we're able to pervade it out to the four directions, to all beings in all directions. Without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world with a heart imbued with loving kindness. Above, below, around, and everywhere. And to all as to myself. So as to myself, to all as to myself. This is the important teaching. If we can't care for ourselves, who can we care for? So, I thank you all for your kind attention and I offer this for your reflection.